Abraham is now 140 years old. He now remarries because his wife Sara recently died. He remarries a woman by the name of Keturah. Our rabbis tell us Keturah was really Hagar, who now came back to the house of Abraham. The Torah goes on to say, with Keturah, at the age of 140, Avram was at this time. We don't know Keturah's age. Vateled loy is Zimran. He now has 6 children. Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midyan, Yishbak, and Shuach. And from these 6 children, the Torah goes on to say, V'Yokshan, Yolad, Eshuvah. And the Don, Uvnei the Don, it goes on to say all the children and the grandchildren that were born to these children. And then the Torah says the final verse, Vayitein Avram es kol ashaloi liYitzchak. Abraham gave everything that he had to Yitzchak. In other words, Yitzchak became the heir. Yitzchak was the main successor of the lineage, of the dynasty of Abraham. What about the other children, these 6 children and grandchildren who were born to him? And similarly, Yishmael, who was born earlier, says the Torah very clearly. Avram gave them matanot, he gave them consolation prizes. And he sent them El Eretz Kedem, he sent them to the east. The Talmud says he gave them Eastern religions. This is what Abraham gave them. He gave them the power of black magic. These are the gifts he gave these nations. But who was his heir? Who was his successor? The Torah clearly says, Kol Ashaloi, whatever he had, he gave to Yitzchak. And furthermore, earlier when Abraham had Yishmael, God promised him a child, and Abraham said to God, I have Yishmael already. God says, no, you will have a child through Sarah. Ki Yitzchak yikad l'chazara. Yitzchak will be your seed. He will be your successor. He will be your heir. Now, this is the general story. After the promise that God tells Abraham he's going to have a child, Sarah now turns 90 years old and gives birth to a child by the name of Yitzchak. Now that alone is a miracle. That alone is a reason to rejoice. But for some reason, the Torah says more than that happened. The Torah goes on to say, God made me a joyous occasion, and whoever heard about it began to laugh. What kind of terminology is this? Says Rashi the following. Harba akorois nifkadu ima. On that day that Yitzchak was born, many barren women became pregnant. Harba choilim nisrapu. Many sick people became healed. Harba tfilos nenu ima. Many prayers were answered. In other words, for shidduchim, for soulmates. They were looking to buy a house, they found their house. They wanted a job, they got a job. All the prayers that people were asking for were answered with the birth of Isaac. Tremendous joy was in the world. So not only did Sarah give birth to a child, Yitzchak, but everybody in town, in the community, in the city, in the country, was benefiting from this child being born. They all had presents. They all had consolation prizes. They too were answered. And then it goes on to say, if that's not enough, Hinikavanim Sarah. Sarah nursed many children. What does that mean? She only gave birth to one child. Why is she nursing many children? Umahu banim loshanab. Ask Rashi, why does it mean many children? Says the following. On the day of this great feast, on the day of this great party, the kings and their wives came to participate, and they brought their babies. Hasares, the princesses, brought their children. Vehinika Isam, and Sarah gave them milk. Sarah nursed these children. Shahayu Imres, Lo Yolda Sara, because people were saying that really Sarah did not give birth. She's only 90 years old. How could it be she gave birth? So she probably adopted a child. She found a child. But it wasn't her own child. So therefore, a miracle happened. As the Talmud said, literally, she opened up like a faucet. And she was able to give as many people that were lined up. She nursed those children. It was a major, major miracle.
That's proof, yeah.
So this is a proof that not only did she give birth to Yitzchak, but she was able to nurse Yitzchak and nurse all these other children. Now, why do we need so many miracles? God promised Abraham Sarah would give birth to a child. Okay, so now she gave birth to a child. But why is it that she needs to have now all these children lined up to nurse them? You want to prove that she's able to nurse a child? So first of all, the fact that Yitzchak's already nursing, that is alone a proof. The kid is eating, you can see the kid is eating. But let's say you don't trust it. Maybe she fed him formula before she brought him to the party. Okay, so you bring 1 or 2 children and she proves she's able to nurse a child. Why does she have to nurse many, many children? Unlimited amount of children. Now, another question, a greater question. 40 years later, Abraham remarries Keturah. He has 6 children. But yet, for some reason, the Torah does not make a big deal about it. It doesn't make like a whole story about it. Like, can you imagine? Avraham is 140 years old, and now he gave birth to 6 children. He fathered 6 children. When it came to Sarah, there's a whole dialogue. Is it true? Is it possible that Sarah, who's 90, will give a child? Is it possible that Abraham, who's 100, will be able to birth a child? And the Torah is going back and forth and talking, and there's a dialogue, and everybody's excited, and there's a whole story that takes place around it. And we come over here to our portion. All of a sudden, Abraham gives birth to 6 children. No big deal. No big deal, no miracle. No one's making a fuss. The papers don't come take pictures on the front page. Why not? Seemingly, this is even a greater miracle. Avraham Avinu is 140 years old. 40 years later, and he still is able to birth and father 6 sons, 6 children. This is an amazing feat. And yet the Torah doesn't seem to make a big deal out of it. Why not? Okay. So how do we understand this? If you go back to the original promise and the original blessing that God gave Abraham and God gave Sarah, we could understand why this had to happen. Before Abraham and Sarah gave birth to Yitzchak, God tells Abraham and Sarah, we need to change your name. Because the names that you have now is a bad mazel. It's not a good mazel for you to have children. Avram will not give birth to Yitzchak. Sarah, Sarai, will not give birth to Yitzchak. But Avraham will. Sarah will. And it's not only that they're going to change their name, but the Torah goes on to say, what is the meaning of the name? And God says, your name is Avraham because you're going to become Av Hamoin Goyim Nisaticha. You will be a father to many, many nations. Many nations. Not only one child, many, many nations. And you will multiply very, very much. And kings will come out from you. And then he goes on to Sara and says, your name is no longer Sarai, but Sara. And similarly, and then he says about Sara the same thing. I will bless her indeed. I will give you a son through her, and then I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations. Kings of peoples will rise from her. In other words, there's more than one child over here. There are many nations coming about from here. So how is this happening? So because God already promised Abraham and Sarah this blessing, now it has to come into fruition. So therefore, when she gives birth to Yitzchak, she now nurses many, many other children. When she gives birth to Yitzchak, many other children are born through this blessing. This is in the merit of Sarah. This was the original deal. This was the original promise. This was the original reason why he changed her name, because many people will come forth through you. Now, just to explain this for a moment, when it comes to miracles, there are two types of miracles. There's called a nes prati, an individual miracle, and there's a nes kolali, a general miracle. We find by general people, the miracle is a general miracle. By individual people, it's an individual miracle. Avram and Sarah are big people, are general people, the leaders. We see by Sarah already earlier that she had a big miracle. Not a small miracle, but a big miracle. We see this twice before. When Sarah was abducted, he was punished, and his entire palace was also punished. Now, why would the entire palace be punished if the fact that he abducted Sarah, so he should be punished alone? Yet we find that because she was a general person, and God gave a big miracle, the big miracle was that the entire palace became sick. And the entire palace was punished with pain and suffering because of Sarah. So it was one individual, it was one person who actually took her into his chamber, but yet everybody, as an extension of Pharaoh, suffered because of this. Similarly, when Avimelech took Sarah, and he abducted Sarah, again he was punished. It says all of his orifices closed, and his wife's, and the entire family, and the entire palace, and his wife could no longer conceive, and therefore Abraham had to pray for Avimelech and the family and the palace so that they should be cured. Again, it was one person taken. Avimelech took Sarah, yet the entire palace was punished. Now in the reverse, Sarah is a general person. She's a leader. And so she is now blessed because of her blessing. Not only is she blessed, but the entire community is blessed. All these barren women have children as well. All these people who needed jobs get jobs. All these people who were sick become healed. All these people looking for soulmates get soulmates. All the blessings that they wanted, they received because of Sarah. It was a general miracle. So Sarah's blessing is answered. What about Abraham's? God promised Abraham, many nations will come from you. Mm-hmm. Now, listen to this interesting twist. There were two ways for Abraham to father many nations. Number one, through Sarah. Now, if Avraham Avinu would have fathered 6 additional children through Sarah, God already told Abraham beforehand, Ki b'Yitzchak yikorei l'chazara. Only Yitzchak will be your heir. Only he will continue the Jewish nation, which would mean that these 6 additional children would not continue the Jewish nation. In other words, they would leave Judaism. They would leave the faith of Abraham. They would start other nations. Can you imagine a mother, Sarah, having 6 children, leaving the home, starting other religions, and becoming rebels? This is the greatest agmas nefesh, the greatest distress, and the greatest pain a mother can have. So there's another way for this to happen. Avraham Avinu marries another woman, and she has 6 children, and from them come other nations, other kings. But the problem is, if he's married to Sarah, and he takes another wife, this other wife becomes a tzara. This becomes a pain to Sarah. There's jealousy. She had that problem earlier with Hagar, and she sent Hagar out of the house. Can you imagine taking back Hagar again, Keturah? The same woman your wife threw out of the house, and you now take her back? There's no shalom bayis here. There's no peace in the house. So God, out of his kindness, waited 40 years, 40 years later, after Sarah passed away, at the age of 127. Now God says, I will continue my promise to you, and now you will father another 6 nations, another 6 children. But it won't be at the same time as Sarah. And therefore the Torah does not make a big deal about this miracle because it's part of the original miracle. It's part of the original promise to Abraham that Avraham means Av Hamoin Goyim. You will be the father of many nations. And from you will come many kings. Now, to begin with, why do we need all this? In reality, why do we need all of this? Abraham and Sarah want a child. They go to a therapist, they go to a doctor, he tells them what to do, and they have one kid. They have to have a whole new name, and not only a new name, but a name, Av HaMoin Goyim, the father of many nations. He wants to have one child. He doesn't want to be the father of other nations. Why is this the name that God chooses for Abraham? And similarly, Sarai becomes Sarah. What does that mean? Till now, you are my princess. Now you become the princess of all the nations. Are we talking about the Jewish nation? Or are we talking about the UN, the United Nations? What is happening over here? And as we discussed in the past, that this is exactly the raison d'etre, the purpose of Abraham and Sarah. This is the mission of Am Yisrael. This is the responsibility of the Jewish people. And that is from the very beginning. God tells Abraham and Sarah, you are to be a light unto all the nations of the world. You are not simply Avram, you are Avraham. You are the father of all the nations. And Sarai, you're not only the mother of the first Jewish child, Yitzchak, but you are now the Sarah. You are the princess of all the nations of the world. You need to influence them. You need to impact them. You are influencers. And therefore, the twist over here is to be effective, to be able to inspire other people, and to really effectuate change. It's not enough that you talk and you preach. You have to also provide. If you provide sustenance, if you provide security, if you provide blessing to people, and then you tell these people, by the way, to enhance your life, you should do A, B, and C, say, wow, you know what? You gave me charity, you gave me food, you gave me shelter, you gave me security. You're good people. Maybe I should listen to you. And I will continue to follow your advice. Abraham and Sarah need to teach the world the 7 Noahide laws. But if they come along to a town and say, do these things, they'll say, who are you? I don't owe you anything. Why should I follow you? But if you provide children, if you provide food, if you provide security, if you provide miracles, that my prayers are answered through you, I'm going to listen to that guy. And therefore, God tells us that through the Jewish people, the rest of the world will be blessed. Those who bless the Jews will be blessed. And today you see it in the Middle East as well. The countries want to make peace with Israel. They want to make a bris. They want to make a pact that Israel should protect them. Israel should bring them security. Israel should bring them IT. And through this, not only does Israel have the ability to provide certain quality of security, but Israel now has the responsibility, as Abraham and Sarah, to teach these laws, these 7 Noahide laws, to the rest of the world. So this responsibility, says the Rambam, was imposed upon every single Jew. Moses on Sinai, in addition to the 10 Commandments, was also commanded to teach all the nations of the world these laws. And in truth, it's not only 7 Noahide laws. There's many, many other laws. There's 60 laws. It could be even 200-300 laws, based on the details of the laws. The 7 are negative, they're only principles, just like Jews don't only have 10 commandments. We have 613 mitzvahs. The 10 commandments is a general concept. And from there is derived the rest. The same is true of the 7 Noahide laws. It's not only 7. From these 7 are derived many, many additional laws. So here the Torah tells us this is the secret mission of Am Yisrael, that you are Av HaMoim Goyim. You are the father of all the nations of the world. And if you want to be effective, and you want to truly create change, then you also need to provide sustenance, blessing, security, protection, and all these good things as well. So here we have it. The Torah tells us this is our mission from the very beginning of time. For many years, unfortunately, Jews did not have that power. We did not have those rights to go and influence and teach the nations of the world. Russia, Siberia, Germany, Spain, all of these countries did not give Jews right to vote. We had no right for authority, no right to be presidents or governors or mayors and have any senior positions. But today, Baruch Hashem, we're living in a free country, and Jewish people have freedom of religion and freedom of speech, and thank God we have tremendous influence. We need to use out this influence to bring ethics and values and sanity to the world. And this responsibility falls upon every man, woman, and child. Not only for a rabbi or a rebbitzin or a leader or a business person who's a big CEO of a major corporation, Fortune 500 company. Every single person has the ability to influence somebody else, to inspire another person, to make another person feel good, and to bring them blessing and to provide healing and inspiration. Comes along the Torah from the very beginning and says, this was your mission. Abraham and Sarah were told from the very start, this is your responsibility. So here we have the empowerment, here we have the blessing, and here we have the mission for every Jew for all generations to come. Talking about miracles. Yitzchak, the first Jewish boy, was born through a miracle. His mother was 90. His father was 100. Why was Yitzchak born through a miracle? To tell us the Jewish people are not normal. We're not a normal nation. Our very conception, our very beginning was through a miracle. Our entire life, our survival is a miracle. Our nationhood is a miracle. Everything we do on a day-to-day basis is not natural. It's a miracle. And therefore we are beyond time and beyond space. We have to strengthen our faith, strengthen our emunah in God to realize that from the very beginning we have these blessings. But to use these blessings, not only for ourselves, but to influence the rest of the world. So talking about miracles, I want to share a recent story that happened just a few months ago. And that is, there's a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Levi Mendelsohn. He's a chaplain in the Israeli army. And as a chaplain, his job is to pray with the soldiers and give them direction and inspiration. But also, being the chaplain, he made sure to put on mezuzot on the various quarters where the soldiers were sleeping. In Israel, there's about 100,000 rooms that are dedicated just for army. 100,000 rooms, and they all need mezuzos, and most of them do not have mezuzos. So this Rabbi Levi Mendelsohn, acquired mezuzos and put these mezuzot on all the doors of all the bedrooms on his base, which was called the Ein Yahev airfield. Now, at that time, around Shavuos time, a suicide drone came into the base and blew up the dining hall and the kitchen, totally into smithereens. I saw pictures. It's totally destroyed, blown up to the ground. It was the middle of the night. No soldiers were there, and no soldiers were hurt because they were sleeping in their rooms, and every one of those rooms had a mezuzah. Those mezuzahs protected the soldiers. Can you imagine if the soldier would have been in the dining room, when that would have happened, God forbid, hundreds of soldiers would have been killed. So this is the power of the mezuzah. This is the miracle that was provided. Now, I asked the rabbi, and what about the dining hall? Did it have a mezuzah also or not? And he said the following. He said he did not put up mezuzahs on the dining hall. He put it up on the bedrooms that were lacking mezuzahs. The dining hall had a previous mezuzah, which was probably not good. It was not kosher. But he did not change it because already it had one. He put up mezuzahs on all of the sleeping quarters. So we hope and pray that this blessing that God gave Abraham and Sarah, Ava Moin Goyim, should continue to the children and grandchildren. And we should have the ability to see God's miracles every day of our life, and to have the knowledge to be a provider, and to be a leader, to be a teacher for all the nations of the world, and very, very soon to see how all the nations will flow to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, with the rebuilding of the Third Holy Temple speedily in our days. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any question, please write it in the comments.